Welcome to Corporate Law Lab. I'm Neal Taylor, host of the podcast and director of the Corporate Law Center at the University of Cincinnati Donald P. Kleekamp College of Law. That's 2 times in a row I've said that right. We renamed the law school a couple months ago, so I'm still in adjustment mode. We're joined today by corporate law fellow Greta Prop, who will be our co-host, and by two partners from Foley Lardner, your Silicon Valley office, right? Or you guys have multiple offices listed, but Louis Lowe and Andre Tiolier. Welcome, guys.
Thanks so much for having us, Neal, and I'm so much looking forward to the conversation.
Same here,
Us
Neal.
too.
Thank you for having us.
So let's start with, we're just going to talk a little bit about your background. Normally when I talk to deal lawyers, I skip right over the background, but you guys happen to have more fascinating backgrounds than your average deal lawyers. It's not just I was at this firm and then I was at that firm and then I was at this firm. So Louis, am I right that you're from the Oakland area?
I am from Oakland, California, Neal. My father was an immigrant from France. He was a Fulbright scholar at Berkeley in the late 60s, and an accident happened, and here I am. I started my career at Sherman and Sterling at a time when I really wanted to be Inspector Gadget, Neal. And I wanted to be in the Foreign Service, in working for the country. And unfortunately, that was not an option. And so I went in the Foreign Service of American Business, and I helped American businesses build in Europe. And then I helped European companies raise capital in the United States for a number of years before coming back to the Silicon Valley in 2005 with a French wife and 2 kids, Neal. I watched the Tour de France. I watched Lance Armstrong win the Tour from my balcony 3 years in a row. And after the third time, I said, okay, I'm ready to come home now. And I came home with my French wife and my 2 kids here to Palo Alto, and I've been here ever since. And I've known Andre for 15 years, and together we co-lead a team of 50 lawyers that are exclusively focused on accelerating the emerging growth technology, life science, or clean energy business. And we help them from garage to global, meaning 2 girls, a laptop, and a dog, all the way to a large global company. And we help them at every space in between. The theory of our team, Neal, is to be Noah's Ark. We have 2 animals of every kind to help you get from a visa into the United States if you're a founder from another country. If you need help forming a company, raising capital on a safe, raising capital from a bank, hopefully raising venture capital from a sandhill road, all the way through to binding patents, coming to market, and commercialization and monetization, and everything in between that a startup encounters on the journey. We try and make sure we have somebody on the squad who can do it. That was a mouthful, so let me stop there.
Well, that's all the questions we have. Thanks for. So, let me back up a second. You went to Georgetown and got a degree in a bachelor's in foreign service, which I would guess Georgetown is one of the few places you can get such a thing.
Yes, it's the one and only. It's the Inspector Gadget School.
So what did you do in between graduating from Georgetown and going to law school?
Great question. So as an undergraduate at Georgetown, I was lucky enough to meet the guy who was representing Mexico in the NAFTA negotiations. And there was a lot to do in Washington at the time, from covering hearings to bringing documents from here to there. And so I was kind of a gopher, Neal. And a gopher is a word that you don't use anymore necessarily in law firms, but it means the guy that will do whatever that needs to be done, whether it's making coffee, picking somebody up from the airport, taking notes at a hearing, carrying an envelope from place A to place B, because in those days, that's how business got done. And I stayed there for 4 years, Neal, and they figured out I had a French passport, and they sent me to Paris. And there was a time when European companies were trying to access the capital markets, and we United States lawyers were the keys to the kingdom. We helped companies get listed on the New York Stock Exchange, which was the gold standard. in those days for European companies, as they didn't have developed stock markets and deep pools of capital. And they were all privatizing, meaning they were state-owned companies that were trying to become public companies. And so it was a lot of fun, Neal, back in those days, helping companies do that.
Yeah, I mean, I worked in telecom, and there was all of the state-owned telecom companies became private companies, and they barely exist anymore, if at all. But
Neal, let me tell you about my toughest assignment. We were working on the privatization of the Greek telecom company, which was called OTE, OTE. And they sent me there for a month to do due diligence. In other words, to verify the contents of the prospectus through which they were going to raise money. And I was told, Louis, do not get into the office before 10 a.m. because, the client will be offended if you get there before they do. And don't stay in the office past 5 o'clock because you don't want to make the client look like they're lazy. So it was a really tough assignment working 10 to 5 for a month in Athens.
sounds awful.
It was terrible.
So what prompted you to go to law school? Was that always in the back of your mind as part of the plan, or did something happen that you said, okay, enough of this, I think I'm going to be the lawyer side of this equation?
It's so funny you say that. I was watching a podcast the other day about what's wrong with America, and the speaker was saying there were too many lawyers, and that our education system produced an outcome where people, against their better instincts, ended up being lawyers. I knew, Neal, when I was 7 years old that I wanted to be a lawyer. 7, and my father will verify this for you. We can call him into the show if you'd like. And it wasn't because of television. I grew up in L.A. Law and Ally McBeal were all the great TV shows, but I didn't watch those shows. I thought that it was going to be the way that I could have an impact on the world. And I've been working on that ever since, Neal, trying to be the best lawyer I can and help, in my current role, helping companies get from ideation to formation to monetization and hopefully to exit. And I have so much fun doing it. When my kids were little, my son famously said to me once, Dad, your job is the dumbest job in the world. You have to sit at a desk inside. You can't, and you talk to people on the phone all day. You don't even have a gun, Dad. And now he's 25 and a half, and he calls me and he says, Dad, like, how can I be like you, where people fight to get 15-minute slots on your calendar and pay you gobs of money for the privilege? And that's really what it is, Neal, is people, clients, founders, investors, they call me with whatever is the most difficult problem that they have. And sometimes it's a legal problem. Sometimes it's a business problem. Sometimes it's just a human problem, Neal. And I really enjoy the variety of my practice and the variety of the companies I work with and the exciting things they're doing. And for posterity, it's July of 2026. And we have a new model in artificial intelligence called Fable, which is rapidly accelerating the way things are getting done. There's a new product called Claude Cowork, which is made it easy for even people like me to create code because the Claude code will do it for you. So it's an exciting time.
Hold your horses on the AI. We're gonna get to it, but we're not gonna let Andre talk at all. If we hear all,
I'm enjoying the ride. Just let him. Totally fine.
Well, I'm gonna interrupt you, and since you went to BC and Greta's from Boston, I'm gonna hand over the mic to her for a few seconds.
Yeah. So as Neal said, I see you went to BC. I grew up outside of Boston, so that's fun to see. What was your transition like to law school, and what impact did your work experience have previously impact your experience at law school?
Well, it's funny. Many lawyers, true to the podcast, ended up in law school because they didn't know what else to do or because they wanted a degree and it was prestigious. I had been a paralegal for 4 years out in the field, working for companies that were actually trying to do things. And so I had the opportunity to look up at all the lawyers that I supported to see what they were all doing. And at the time, I thought, the lawyers that are adding the most value and that they're the most needed and probably have the less stupid time in the office are the tax lawyers. And so I looked at law school like a vocational school, like learning a trade, like a plumber. How do you plumb this pipe? And I didn't care about my grades so much, so I wasn't trying to take basket weaving. I wanted to take all the courses that I knew I would need to be able to advise a company. So I took all the hard tax courses. I took all the Article 9 secured credit classes. I took some practicums on how to negotiate contracts, and I had so much fun. It was a little hard to get back from juggling 10 projects at once and to kind of read top front to back a 50-page case and then another one and another one. So certainly it was a transition from being a paralegal into law school and then out of law school and into the practice. I also had to transition, but I always knew what I wanted to do, so it was a labor of love.
I've always found, I was selling windows and doors for a couple of years in between. And while that didn't have any particular impact on my ability to practice law, I think coming to law school with the idea that, you do something every day for a long time was completely different than undergrad, right? In undergrad, you could work as much or as little as you wanted and still get through. At least that was my experience.
Yeah. Well, I also think it's great that you came to law school with a goal too. I think that makes it easier to then, you take the classes that you want, and hopefully that obviously helps in your career. I'm working this summer for the first time. I'm going to be a 2L or first time as a legal job. And it's great to see like, okay, I'm learning these topics at my summer job. Now I'm going to go back to school, take the classes that I think will really help me with the summer job and bounce off from that. So it's great that you had that coming in. Were there any classes, this might like combine some of the later questions too, but were there any classes that you found, the most impactful to your career now, or any just like standout classes, maybe completely separate from that, of just what you found incredibly interesting at BC?
Thanks for that. That's a great question. A class that I took that I didn't expect would be so impactful was administrative law. And as a transactional lawyer, I'm constantly in front of the Securities and Exchange Commission, the self-regulatory organizations like FINRA, the Federal Trade Commission, and we can go through the alphabet soup of regulators. The body of law is all undergirded by administrative law. And so I found that to be counterintuitively a really hard class and a really enjoyable class, and one that I hearken back to often. One, I'll tell you a funny story, is I knew I was going to be a securities lawyer because that's what I'd been doing. And that was sort of undergirding the practice that I had and I knew I would have. And so I was able to take that class, and the final exam was multiple choice. And it worked like this: if you got the answer right, you got 1 point. If you left it blank, 0 points. And if you got it wrong, -4 points. And the lesson was, if you get something wrong under the securities laws, somebody may go to jail or go bankrupt. And so don't get a wrong answer. Either you know the answer, because there's a right or wrong answer, and either you know it or you don't. And so that was one of many lessons I learned.
Wow. I didn't know BC had that's a hard, scary exam.
Did you want to? Oh, I'm sorry. It's mine.
That's okay.
So you mentioned you went to Sherman. I guess Sherman figured out you spoke French and said,
Yes.
we need to get this guy to Europe because none of us do.
Well, they had plenty of people that did, but that had a passport and would put up with French people. Uh, and I also had an ulterior motive to be there because of my wife. So that all came together beautifully after and during my third year of law school.
So, so in your third year of law school, I, I guess we can how you met your mother is a TV show they were just talking about. So you met your wife and went to Europe as part of following her.
Exactly.
Got it.
She's a lot better looking than me, Neal. So
There's always a relationship in the story somewhere
yeah,
that is why you did this.
exactly.
So what did you find? I mean, you said your parents were French, so you at least understood a bit about, I think my first time in Europe, I was going on an internal investigation, and it was, a huge, and then I moved to Brussels years later. Um, what did you find about the cross-border transactions that you liked, and what was the hard part of it that you maybe weren't as prepared for?
What I really enjoyed was the cultural element of it, Neal. You had a whole other overlay of a transaction, which was not just the personality differences that human beings have, but the cultural differences that sides have. So having a conference call between Italians on the one side and Finnish people on the other side and Americans in the middle was always very entertaining because when one person said yes and another person said yes, that did not mean that there was an agreement. And it took me a while to figure that out. And sometimes having something written on paper and signed did not mean you had an agreement. And so really many life lessons can be learned from the cultural differences between two parties in a transaction. But so I really enjoyed that. I ultimately in 2005 decided to come back to the United States because the capital markets were becoming local enough and deep enough in Europe that, and there had been this creation of a Sarbanes-Oxley Act and the what I'll call the extraterritorial application of U.S. laws to other countries, which were making European companies want to get out of the United States. And so I saw the pendulum, the beginning of the swing to the other side. And I thought, well, if there's a time ever to move back to the U.S., it's now. And for all those lawyers listening to this, when you go abroad, it's so exciting, but you make yourself very unique, and that's great. But if you want to come back to the United States, you have a little bit of a challenge because your skill sets kind of go off in one direction that are relevant to a certain community that may not be appreciated by folks back home. And so when I was looking to move back to the U.S. in 2005, I intended on coming to one of the traditional Silicon Valley law firms, but when I interviewed with them, they couldn't really understand what I had been doing for 5 years at Sherman and Sterling in Europe. So I ended up getting offers from two law firms, one called Simpson Thacher and the other called Davis Polk here in Silicon Valley. And each of those offices had been founded by former Sherman and Sterling partners who knew what we were doing in Europe. And so I was lucky to find them. But kind of the re-entry, whenever you're planning to go abroad, you've got to also plan the re-entry. And so I hadn't planned it and I kind of lucked into it, but that's something to think about.
I was given the same advice of, plan your reentry. And well, it's great advice. It's almost impossible to do. I mean, I left on a 3-year deal that turned into 20. And because I had a reentry plan, but things change. And when I decided, okay, I'm not going back to the company I'm working for, I need a new one. And I remember talking to a headhunter, and he said, well, there's probably not 5 jobs looking for you that come up every year, but when one does, you're probably one of 10 people that could do it. So you do have a very specialized skill set that you don't really, that's not what you're setting out to do, but that's what you've got. Um, I can let you respond to that, or we can let Andre talk since he's been very patient.
Well, I was going to say Andre is the king of special expert knowledge, and somebody who has life experience applying that in different scenarios, and has a great story. So I think that's the perfect transition.
Awesome. Okay, well, you've just been introduced as the king of
You should never do that. It's like set the bar high. It's
very high
yeah.
expectation.
There's a Jerry Seinfeld story that actually he was introduced by a comedian that was preceding him on a show, and then the guy said, "Well, the greatest comedian of all time." So he went in, did his set. By the time he walked out of stage, he got the young comedian, put him on the wall, like, don't you ever do this again, because he set the expectations so high. And that was Jerry Seinfeld. So anyway, so sorry, fire away.
So, you went to law school in Brazil. It's in Sao Paulo, right? Well, in English, it's the Pontifical Catholic University of Sao Paulo, right?
Correct.
And-
The abbreviation is called PUC, Pontifícia Universidade Católica. Yes.
Yeah, no, I've been practicing saying Sao Paulo. I'm not doing the rest. It's an undergraduate degree there, much like in Europe, correct?
Correct. Yeah. In Brazil, we don't have undergrad. You go straight from high school to law school. So by the time you're 22, you're already a qualified lawyer.
Okay. And then did you have like a period of time where you had to do articles before you're like fully qualified, or you just straight in?
No, just straight in. So the difference there is it's a 5-year law school program as opposed to a 3-year. And the beauty of it is that it allows you and it gives you time. And when I went back in the day, the recommendation has always been start working. So I started going to law school in the morning. I would have classes in the morning, clock in at a law firm at noon, and I would have no time to leave. So I just worked through my first year of law school all the way to the 5th year, which again, I think it's a different perspective because you get more in the job kind of experience as opposed to what you can get here where you have to wait for your summer breaks to be able to actually do summer programs at law firms.
Great. I didn't realize that. I've been in a lot of places, and normally when you've got an undergrad degree, then there's some process before you're fully qualified after you get out of school.
Oh, no, sorry. If I'm mistaken. No, it's actually a JD. It's a JD equivalent.
I got it. No, I
yeah.
got it. So it's different than in the UK where it's a 3-year undergrad degree, right? And
Correct.
so you're not a lawyer when you come out, or a solicitor. There's more to do. It was the same in South Africa. So good to learn. How did you, I mean, I guess you didn't know when you practiced for 7 years in Brazil before you came to the US for an LLM. I guess in hindsight, how would you compare practicing in Brazil to working in the US?
I think
What attracted you to going to the US after doing it 7 years there?
so. I kind of my
A lot
story
of questions there.
Yeah. So my story is I'm American born. I was born in New York City. My father was working for Sherman Sterling back in the day, and know some of Louis' former older partners, if you will. At the time, he was doing banking and tax law, and I'm a 4th-generation lawyer in my family or on my dad's side. So this was something that I heard about on the breakfast and lunch table all the time. So kind of like Louis, I kind of knew going in what I wanted to do. And then coming back, I was raised when in the mid 90s, my father moved to do his own tech company, dropped law, and then developed product and went to the Rockies to kind of sell it out. Was there for like 15 years, and I was going back and forth Brazil and the Rockies for school and so forth. And he actually went through a lawsuit, and in the state that he was in was Utah. Even for civil claims, it was a jury. So I got to see it when I was in my teens, firsthand experience. Like, wow, I didn't understand any of it, but still, it was sort of like I got to experience that as well. So when I went back to Brazil to practice, I was like, okay, I'm going to practice for as long as I can. But doing an LLM was already in my horizon. That was already an idea. When I came to do my LLM, I was very open-minded of potentially not going back. Now, the trick part was I was about to become partner in Brazil within probably 2 or 3 years. I have to call my old firm and ask if that's what they're going to do, but that was the plan. And then when I got and decided to stay, and then did a visiting lawyers program at Paul Weiss first for 1 year, and then moved and stayed and went to our former shop at DLA for almost 8. The challenge was exactly what was Louis talking about. It's very hard for law firms to be able to, based on the skill set of a lawyer that practiced so many years abroad, as to where you place that lawyer, both in comp, both in sort of like how long for partnership and skill set. So it was very interesting to me to kind of start climbing the ladder all over again when I moved to the US. And like everything, like you said, Neal, that there is a story. I met my wife during my LLM, and she was also a lawyer from Argentina. So staying in the U.S. for us was like a neutral country with both of us could practice and stay and do it. And since she became an in-house counsel, she worked for Clear Gottlieb, Buenos Aires for many years, and then we both stayed, and that's where we are. So it was the transition. The hard part was, well, I have to do this all over again and basically start from scratch and start climbing the ladder. And the answer was not all over again, but 2/3 of the way, yes. And then to answer your question specifically, I think one of the biggest things in terms of difference of practice is the level of client expectation in the U.S. in terms of efficiency and in terms of readiness to be able to tackle certain things as compared to other countries is completely different. So, funny story I had, my first deal I was doing in the U.S., I had to do an internal call for our specialist for an M&A deal, and I had a call with the client. So we had to do 2 calls. I set up the call with the internal specialist at 3 p.m., call with the client at 4. Partner calls, picks up the phone, calls me. I was like, what are you doing? I'm like, 2 calls. Here are the invites. The partner says, well, the internal call with the specialist is a 15-minute call. Schedule that for 3:45, and then the other call at 4 o'clock, because otherwise you just blocked a 3 o'clock slot that could be talking to a client. And my mind just went, that would never happen in so many other jurisdictions. And so that level of efficiency, it's something that I don't think you see anywhere else in the world other than the U.S.
So you went straight from getting your LLM to taking the bar.
Correct.
I mean, I've seen you'd already done quite a bit of schooling and quite a bit of practice. So, but I have seen, we have an international LLM program here. Some of the students choose to do what you did, go straight to the bar. Some of them actually then enter the JD program. Was that ever a thought to like get the JD, or did you feel ready? And how daunting was?
No, my goal was, so I went to the University of Chicago. My goal was to get connected with people that I knew that could develop a business later on. So I already had that mindset going into the LLM. So it wasn't necessarily just for the knowledge itself. And
Right.
2, to be able to allow me to qualify to sit for the bar. That was it. I was never going back to the JD to learn. I got the skill set that I needed. I needed to go into big law, which is what I wanted to do. So that was the path of least resistance, if you will, as opposed to going back and doing a JD. I had some friends in the LLM that actually did that. Most of them Europeans, some of them from India as well. But as far as most of the people that ended up working in the US, they all went LLM, bar, law firm.
Great. I'm going to hand it back to Greta, and I think that the next series of questions we're going to ask to both of you.
The first question here is, what was the biggest learning curve as an associate going into your practice? And I know, Andre, you said you would you'd be working and then you go into your classes, then you continue work. So like maybe it's a different experience in that regard. But yeah, any answers to that question?
So I mean, for me, it was just seeing on the job experience while it was going through law school, which is again completely different experience than one would have here in the U.S. I remember missing exams because I had closing of deals, and that looked way more exciting to me than actually going to class. For the lawyers hearing it doesn't mean go to class, go learn, but it is on the job experience. It was very, very exciting because I was seeing the real world, the things that I was learning in law school, and would be able to apply it. So to me, that was my kind of like aha moment. It's like, wait, I get to do this, and I get to go to meetings. And again, like to Louis' point, I was serving coffee and I was like learning and just breathing it all in. And the one interesting thing I would say in that experience is, at least for me, it was always a plateau game. It would be like you would learn something and then you do the same thing all over again for a period of time. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, I got some confidence. I got this. I can do this. I was put it in situations. I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. Like to negotiate deals as a second year associate because it was 2000 and whatever, and the world was exploding. That's what we have to do deals. So that plateauing, staying there, comfortable, and then all of a sudden you're put in a situation that you have to go a step beyond with the work experience, to me was how I kind of created the backbone of my practice throughout my career.
So, Louis, what was the first deal you first chaired?
Wow, first chair. Well, that's a loaded question because I wouldn't want to any of my previous colleagues or partners that I worked for to think that I usurped their role. Um, uh, so that's a kind of a tough question. But
Well, how about the first deal that it wouldn't upset them to hear that you thought you were the first chair?
That's funny. That's funny. Well, in my Sherman and Sterling and Simpson Thatcher days, I was an associate. But as I grew in my experience, I was given more and more rope and leeway. And one of my former mentors likes to joke that she remembers me as a paralegal at the financial printer, essentially negotiating terms of the prospectus as if I was the senior partner, because all the senior partners were so busy that they were at other printers getting other prospectuses done. And so I might have been just a little bit precocious, Neal and Greta, which a little bit of gumption and chutzpah takes you a long way, but arrogance is dangerous. But I'll share with you, Neal, that in my career I've seen three big waves or changes that have impacted the profession, and the first was obviously globalization and business crossing borders in a big way. The second one I would say was the creation of the in-house lawyer class. And when I first started out, especially in Europe, there were no U.S. lawyers in-house, so everything that we did was farmed out directly from business people, and I was dealing directly with business people, which was a fabulous experience. Whereas today, when I deal with especially larger companies, there's always a layer of counsels and often multiple layers of internal counsels. And then the third and the greatest wave, and we're still in it, and maybe we'll always be in it, is the technology revolution. And when I first started practice, there were not software programs that would show the difference between two versions of a document. So we would have to do what was called a hand-marked delta view, or a hand-marked comparison, which would show the differences with a pencil and highlighter between two documents. And then there was software to do that. When I first started, there were no laptops, so we had to be in the office to actually do work. I remember when I first got a BlackBerry, which, most of Greta probably wasn't born yet when people were still using those. Before the iPhone, you could answer emails off hours, not plugged into the computer, and clients thought that was amazing. And we thought this was a revolution, and it was. And obviously now with AI, it's changing everything. And I think it'll continue to change everything. And if I could make one prediction on this show, Neal and Greta, it would be that I think we'll soon find legal tech companies that are interacting directly with our clients and with us. And maybe that's an AI agent, an AI law firm. Those already exist now. I'm not sure, but I'm still very bullish on the profession of humans practicing law, because what I find that humans especially value today amidst all of this AI is, what is your human business judgment based on your actual real life experience dealing with humans? Because AI is still just helping humans deal with other humans. So I'll stop there.
Well, I mean, you talked about the technology revolution, and I remember the first time I sent an external email. and it was like I was local counsel for somebody, and it was like I had to type in like 3 lines of code to be able to get the email to leave the building. And then you mentioned being at financial printers. I mean, people don't have no idea what you're talking about in the classes around here now. When I came back to the law school and they showed me the library and there aren't any books in there, I was like, what? you know. Um, and I think that pace of change it's accelerating again. When I got to law school, we had um, somebody asked me why I prefer Lexus over Westlaw, and it's like because we had 2 Lexus terminals and only 1 Westlaw terminal. So you didn't have to stand in line for the Lexus terminal, and that's why I got proficient in Lexus. So we are going to, and I think it's definitely accelerating. Um, I mean, let's just go there on AI. How is AI changing your relationship with your clients, if it is?
Um, that's interesting. I have lots of different types of clients, Neil, and I see the world in 3 circles. I didn't make this up. Another famous Silicon Valley lawyer came up with this paradigm that early stage companies at formation are in what's called the first circle. Companies that get to $10 million of revenue and are in scaling mode, not startup mode, are in the second circle, and then large global companies in the third circle. And maybe I'd put private equity firms in there. And most of the third circle companies are public, but many of them are private equity backed. And so the way you serve those companies is very different. And AI is relevant to each of the 3. And I think each of the 3 now expect that we are using and leveraging AI to bring their bills down, and to do tasks that can be done with AI, should be done with AI. But similarly, even though a client wants you to use AI to do due diligence, if they ask a question and you tell them, well, that's what the AI said, that's not an acceptable answer.
Right.
And there still has to be human review, human overlay, human judgment, and the level of human overlay and human judgment is different in each of those 3 circles, but it's there, and it's really important. So I think that the challenge for young lawyers coming up is to do 2 things. One is to be master of the technology, how to use it. And 2 is how to communicate with real humans. And I look at the class of lawyers who came up during COVID and were remote. And, for a long time, they struggled with, human to human interaction, being in the office, the unplanned discussions, the kind of what I'll call water cooler chatter. And so it's really important to be in the office as much as you can and to have human to human interactions. I tell this to the 50 lawyers who work on our team: please go have coffee with the young person who is your corollary at the other law firm, at the other venture firm or the bank or the private equity firm or the company. Go meet these people in person. And I think that, with AI, it's going to allow young lawyers to have more client contact because there is going to be less of a need to do this, what I'll call grunt work that kept lawyers in the background. They're now much more in the foreground. So while I know there's a lot of angst and anxiety amongst lawyers, especially younger lawyers, about the future of law, I'm very bullish on it, and I think it's going to be a great time to practice.
Yeah, I mean, first deal I ever worked on, or maybe the second. The first deal I actually worked on was in Brazil, but I honestly don't remember what I was told to do on that deal. I just remember that it was. Um, I was making photocopies in the middle of the night because we were selling a large division, and the only way to get the supplier contracts without everyone knowing that we were doing something was to come in at midnight and start making photocopies. And now there's no way that there's a company that only has their supplier contracts in hard copy in one place that you have to go to make a photocopy if you want another one. So it will, I completely agree. It will relieve young lawyers of a lot of that grunt work, but I also got lots of hours that way. And so I worry a little bit about that of like, are there enough hours to support the number of associates that law firms used to be able to support?
I would also go off on that of like not only the hours, but like doing maybe like the more grunt work, but like the experience behind that too. Like, how do you balance the efficiency of like, using AI and being like masterful in it, but then also like getting that experience as well? Like, do you have any tips and tricks of balancing both, which is an impossible question to ask, but
Well, let me take that and then Andre will jump in. First off, we are seeing an acceleration of company creation like never before in the history of time. And we're also seeing a proliferation of contracts to document transactions that never happened before because people wouldn't bother. And now AI is creating contracts. And there are going to be disputes about those contracts. A lot of people don't read the slop that comes out. And so was there a meeting of the minds, Greta? Remember contracts. What are the terms? Was it a mistake? How do you remediate the contract? I mean, the opportunities for lawyers has never been as great as now. So again, master the tools of AI and don't be afraid of it. And then go and meet the client, talk to the client, explain to them what it means, put it in the context that it requires. And I see one of the pitfalls of young lawyers that they fall into is what I'll call robotic communication, where somebody says draft this agreement for me and they just send a draft of the agreement. Well, actually the cover email was the most important part of that communication. And I think that in the advent of AI, it's not going to be the cover email because nobody's going to read that anymore, because they can see that it's written by AI. It's going to be the phone call that you have to say, I sent by email or by Slack or whatever is the modal of communication, this agreement, and this is what it says. Because Greta, the amazing thing about AI is nobody's reading anymore. So as lawyers, you're almost always the most thinking person in the room, and the most thinking person in the room has a giant advantage over everyone else. One pitfall that we lawyers have, especially as I see in-house lawyers, is that because you are the only one that is writing things down and the only one that is thinking about things that get written down, that a lot of non-legal work falls onto you, and you become kind of the cesspool of everybody else's work. And it's very important to stay true to the North Star. What is my role? I am a lawyer. I'm here to give legal advice. Is this legal or not? It's not legal. I don't do that. And using the tools and communicating. So those phone calls, and especially the unscheduled ones, I try and have a discipline, Greta, of calling at least 5 people a day with no agenda. Hey, how are you? I was just thinking about you. And the difference between good lawyers and great lawyers, Greta, are the ones that make their clients feel covered, comforted, thought about. This is a service business. This is a relationship business. So it's making a relationship and then, watering it. Think of it as a plant. You can't flood it. You got to water it regularly so that it grows. I've talked too much. Andre, you have.
No, I would add to that on the question about young associates. It's also, I mean, AI gives you kind of like a straight shot out, a really quick answer, right? Path of least resistance for you to get point A to B. In our minds, they don't like that way. You have to build block by block, and that's how we get educated and we learn. So I think the tip for young associates is also, even though you have the tools and you have to master it, make sure that you're going an extra step to understanding why you're doing it, right? It used to be back in the day, there's a reason why partners or senior associates would hand mark things and hand it over and have someone type it. Then track changes came over, and then you had partners that would just put it in track changes, and the amount of associates they would see like click, okay, because it's a partner drafting. Where am I going to change? There's a reason for it, and the reason is for you to learn. Now, AI accelerates that even to an extra level where you're just throwing the question and you're getting the answer, and you have to confirm it or not confirm it. So if you want to learn, I think Louis spoke very precisely about the business part of it. On the actual technical legal side of it is you have to master and be master about a few areas that you're practicing, because you can be that manager, you can be that person. I joke that sometimes we're more psychologists than we are lawyers at some point, because it's about setting expectation, making sure that the client feels heard. But the other part of it is, if you're not an expert in what you're saying, and if you don't master that, then people, and you get it wrong at big law firms rates, you can't get it wrong. They're going to be like, wait, why am I paying this amount of money again? Right. You can't go there. So you have to master a few of the fields that you're working on, so that when you speak about it, people are like, oh, okay, he knows what he's talking about, or she knows what she's talking about. And then therefore I trust this person. I joke that lawyers are like doctors. Either you trust the one you have or you don't, right? So if you have a bad experience because of an answer, or because some lack of communication, because the process was broken, if you're the client, you're going to be like, well, sorry, it doesn't work. And again, there's no size fits all. Sometimes you're going to hit it off with the client. Sometimes clients like lawyers that are more bullish. Other clients like clients that are more sort of constructive in a way, doing a deal or even a litigation or a settlement, right? So it's that combination where I think AI came in to help us. But the younger generation of lawyers have this challenge, which is, oh, I have readily answers at the tip of my fingers right now, but I actually have to learn it. It's because I have to be able to talk about it and discuss and answer follow-up questions on these things, where I'm not going to have the AI right after in the top of my hand to be able to do it.
Yeah, I don't know how long it's going to take it to get there. It's obviously gotten better. When I first played around with AI, if I asked it a question I knew nothing about, I got an answer that looked really good. If I asked it a question about something that I knew at a very deep level, it would be like, it's in the neighborhood, but it's not the answer. And I think, but I developed that expertise over many years to know the difference. And I think you're right. I think the challenge for the young lawyers is how to know the difference. And we have not said like some law schools have, when in your neighborhood is like outlawed AI in the first year and no laptops in classes. And while I understand the thinking behind it, I'm just kind of like, well, you could also go in and smash the loom if you don't want the clothes made that way. I think it's here, and I don't think it's going away. I'm not quite sure how we strike that balance. I'm curious to your thoughts on how we do.
Well, I think first the model, as Louis mentioned, right? Like you have clients that are saying, you need to reduce my bill because now there are things they don't have to drop 15 associates for 1,000 hours a year for a project. So the part of it where I think we're going is, I think it's twofold. I think the level of expertise that you have and that business counseling that you can give as a lawyer, that's going to be valued. And that's where I think people will pay top dollars for it. And and then the other part is just the overall business model of a law firm. Because if you think about it, if you're billing in hours, right, AI is making law firms make less money theoretically because you're doing things quicker. So it's where we're going to be and where our clients' expectations. And we're seeing this where sometimes if you're doing a fixed fee as opposed to an hourly rate, you strike a balance. There's like no matter, but there's enough buffer on the law firm side where if the deal goes sideways, it's still doable for the firm to be able to do it, because you have obviously the costs of the associates and payroll and overhead and all that comes with that we track to make sure that a particular transaction has been profitable for the firm or not. So I think we're moving to that. I think we're also hearing from clients, which again, it's harder for younger associates into how much they're willing to pay for that service and so forth. And then we partners have to strike again the balance of, are we going to charge you or not? Because, right, you can't like, oh, I don't know how many hours for signature pages on a deal. They're going to be like, you press a button, you have the form, you put the spreadsheet. That's how you do it right now, right? And so I think that's where we're heading. And to Louis' point, it continues to be a service business. And so it continues to be a people's business. So it's who do you know, who you're calling, because you can talk to company A, B, and C, but you're actually talking to Joel, Paul, and Mary, who are the general counselors or the CEOs who have the problem and want the solutions from you.
You know, I mentioned Lexis and Westlaw earlier, and when I transitioned from private practice into being in-house, back then they charged on a per search basis, right? And a lot of law firms just pass it along to the client. And I was like, you got a library. How you decide to do research is on you. I'm not paying for computerized research, but I do want my bill to be lower, and I don't want your associates to get lost in that library for hours and hours, which is a long way of saying your clients want you to reduce their bills, but you're also investing in these tools, right? How do you see that balance being struck? I mean, I think, Kirkland announced that they're putting 500 million into AI, which, okay, but I don't know how, but that'll be interesting to see how that comes out.
Well, and Louis, you can jump in here. I mean, we used Harvey and other tools as well. We have a 85% adoption within the firm and a law firm of 1,300 lawyers. So whatever firm is not using it, you're already behind, quite honestly, in big law, and it has to be used and deployed. Now, how you use it and the level of efficiency, and if you're creating your internal tools or if you're using some other third-party provider, is yet to be seen in what firms are going to do. I think we are spearheading this. We think it's the only, especially within the circles that Louis talked about, right? The first circle is a lot of it needs to be automated. You can no longer charge thousands of dollars to form a company. It needs to be press a button and then you're done. Otherwise, people are like, and then the value comes on the actual, should I raise 3 million or 5 million? Right. And then like, okay, what's the valuation? How you're doing it? Why? And what's the business plan? So, that I think you need to use it, and the expectation is that you're going to use it. And like I said, I think we're going to go to a model where the partners of the firms are the ones that are going to have to strike the balance of how much we're going to use it to make it more profitable and how we're going to charge clients and be able to do it so that what the clients are really paying for is the analytical and sort of business counseling of things at a higher level or more precision, as opposed to doing just more of the kind of manual laboral work that we have now.
When I started practicing 35 years ago, there was a lot of talk about the imminent death of the billable hour. And here we are, and every 5 years there's this is what's going to kill the billable hour. I've seen a fair amount of chatter about it, that AI is the death knell of the billable hour. What do you think, Louis?
I, like you, have been hearing the same thing since inception. And then, in the dot bomb, I heard it. In the great financial crisis, I've heard it. I've been hearing it again with AI. And I got to tell you, I have experimented as a independent, entrepreneurially focused lawyer. If you think about a law practice as a service, think of it as a hamburger. Some people like ketchup, some people like pickles, some people like mustard. We're pleasers. So I've tried to do fixed fee deals with clients, and I find that they're always happy with them if they're giving you more work and they're paying you what they think is less than the work you're doing, and they're never happy if it's the other way. And so you always end up back at the billable hour.
I said the same thing about the law firms, by the way. You guys are always keeping score the old way, and whether a fixed fee deal is working or not for you. And I have unhappy lawyers when I've when I've taken it out of them, and if they're really happy, I know I've screwed up.
If they pay too quickly, you paid it too much.
Yeah, I find that fixed fees, as much as they make sense, they have only worked in specific market segments. But in the vast majority of work that lawyers do, human beings, that is, I find that the billable hour still is the touchstone. And we talk about alternative fee arrangements rather than fixed fees. And so we find that whether it's a blended rate, a discounted rate, a cap with conditions, that's more what we're doing rather than just straight fixed fee.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I actually really prefer the rates where, give me the discount, and if we end up at X, work out some sort of success fee. If we go 8 times the budget and the deal gets done, I'm really upset if you come to me for a success fee if we've blown way past the budget. But yes, the deal got done, so I should be happy. Those are the firms I didn't hire twice.
Right. And it's all about the relationship at the end of the day, right? Because you can listen, I'm going to hurt this time. I'll do a write-off or a discount, and then the next one will do it. And if there is that understanding, especially when you're going through the circles of early stage growth and late stage, right? It's not on a seed financing, a $2 million financing that you're going to make money. It's through the life cycle of that company and the relationship. And most importantly, the word to mouth reputation that you're going to get with your client, where your client is going to recommend to other founders, other CEOs, and that's how you start building your practice little by little, and working with clients on the fees is part of it.
So, Louis, I wanted to ask you about the. I noticed on your LinkedIn profile that you crisis counsel is high up on the list. Are there particular types of crises that you feel particularly you should call me about, or are you all comers? Tell me your crisis. I'm here for it.
Well, the very nature of a crisis, Neal, is something that is unpredictable and probably puts your franchise at risk. And the very nature of it is unpredictable. And as I get older in life, Neal, what I find most exciting and most interesting is the variety and the spontaneity and the urgency of the matter. And so I might not be the best fit for any kind of crisis, but I certainly am a good call for any kind of crisis. And I'll give you some examples. I once led a public offering for a company in the aviation space, and we had not one but 2 crashes during that period, and those were company-threatening events. And how you respond to them, and how you assess them, and how you move forward is really, really important. And it can make or break, how you come out on the other side. And so those are, just some examples of things that can pop up and are completely unpredictable.
Given that it's unpredictable, are there any rules of thumb you have about how you approach a crisis?
Well, approaching a crisis requires a lot of preparation, not for the specific crisis that is going to happen, randomly, but for the process of responding to a crisis. And COVID was one. Having your network taken down by a hacker could be one. There's so many different types, and to be ready, what we try and do, and companies have to be fairly late stage and developed to have the budget for this, is to do a tabletop exercise and practice. What would we do if? Here's a fact pattern, and I lead these from time to time. In outside director groups, and at boards that I counsel, and we usually try and come up with a hypo, and we work through it. And some lessons I've learned is having a paper copy of everybody's cell phone number that's relevant. from the general counsel to the chief human relations officer to each director to obviously the CEO and the CFO and the GC. But what about also the chief information security officer, the CISO? That's a pretty important person to have their phones, and they need to have your cell phones in the event of any kind of network issue, which, for a technology company has got to be front and center. But it could be that, there's a problem with the production of the financial statements and there's some input that was wrong. God forbid it was fraudulent. It's going to take a lot of time to figure out where the fraud came from. But right away, you've got to take some steps. It could be an HR issue, at some level of the team. It could be at the board. It could be a director that does something and takes an action that is maybe outside of their swim lane. It could be an external event where you have an external investor who comes hostile. What do you have protocols about how you speak to them? So, Neal, the short answer is that prior preparation avoids piss poor performance.
And I'll add one more thing. When you are working at a law firm and there is a crisis, which I think clients will value, is responsiveness. So there is not a single client that we work with that they don't have our direct personal phones where they pick it up. And I tell my clients, if I don't respond within 5 minutes, it's either because I'm on a call or I'm at the hospital. Those are the only two options. And I find it funny because there is this new generation where people will text you, can you talk? And then I just pick up the phone and call them like they need to talk to. And this is normally in a day-to-day, let alone in a crisis, right? You cannot have a CEO of a company that's on a crisis. It's being hammered by the board and it takes you 2 to 3 hours to respond. You have to be there because they need to know you have their back, and you do. And that's how, even if you're not the specialist on that particular matter for whatever, if it's employment or whatever it is, you're going to bring in the rest of the team and you're the concierge for that client and make sure that you're getting that answer right away.
And I think with what I've seen with clients and crises is you have to be willing to help them do something about it, right? Don't like, if you give them always the most conservative answer possible, you're not helping. That's not what they want, is just to say, oh, do nothing, because if you do something, it could cause you a problem down the road, because they feel like they have to do something, and often they do. I remember I worked with a guy, Fred Garcia, who I hope to have on the podcast, who said, when you've got a damaging rumor about, you can either reduce how important it is or how ambiguous it is. But you need to do something and not just let the rumor eat you alive. And the amount of, he said it as a equation. The damage of a rumor is equal to how important it is times how ambiguous it is. So you need to do, either you can make it clearer, that, you're not selling counterfeit parts out there. If you're, a technology company making things. Although there was one issue, I don't know, maybe the lettuce farmers, given that this is July 2026, will be picking up the phone and calling us after this. We've been going for a bit longer than probably you think we have. So I want to, I'll let Greta ask whatever questions I skipped over from her part of the outline. But I'm curious to hear from both of you. What's your favorite deal you ever worked on? And I know they're like your children and you love them all equally, but you got to have a favorite.
You preempted what I was going to say, which is that they're all like my children and I love all of them equally in different ways. But if there was one thing that I could do every morning, Neal, it's something different. And that variety is the spice of life. And so for my clients out there, they know that I love them and I treat them all as if they're my number one priority, and they are. Just ask my wife. With that, I'm going to have to sign up because I'm an extra half an hour later than I had planned. But I wanted to thank you for the opportunity to talk to you and to your audience. And Greta, I want to wish you the best as you embark on your career. And please don't hesitate to reach out to Andre or myself if we can be helpful in any way. And Neal, thanks for doing this.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Go Reds. All the best. Bye-bye.
Okay, you gonna dodge that one too, Andre?
Well, I think I'll put it this way. I won't say a specific deal. I think the deals that I like doing a lot are the ones where I think there is a partnership with the client, where the client sees the value that you're bringing to the table, and it's very rewarding when you get a call where say, well, I tried some other partner or some other firm or whatever it is, but like, I trust you. And then those are the ones. I will tell one story, those in my good old Brazil days, where there was no laptops, as Louis was mentioning, which was, I had a deal that was a bank was investing a fair amount of money on a healthcare company. And I got into the office as a mid-level associate. I got into the office on Monday morning, and we got a call and say, listen, all the business points have been lined up. There's a press conference scheduled for Thursday. Get it done. So it was all hands on deck. I didn't sleep for 2 nights. I slept for 40 minutes under my desk. So it's kind of like the badge of honor and I got so tired after that deal that when I actually went home to rest, my body felt that I was going to actually pass out. And so I would wake up, like as if my body was feeling that I was going to pass out until I kind of and then I didn't work for 2 days. I showed up on Friday, and then one of the parts said, what are you doing here? Go home, go rest more, take the rest of the week. So it's one of those things, especially when you're doing, I think, M&A as opposed to other types of practices, is it's that spirit of everybody, and you're going to fight and you're going to yell and everybody's cranky and you eat pizza and it's just the way it is. But at the end of the day, it's when you're done, it's kind of fun to look back into it. While you're doing it, it's pretty stressful, but after, it's kind of fun. And you're like, and the other thing I miss is now in the era of DocuSign, it was so wonderful when we could actually go into conference rooms, everyone, and then there would be this, okay, we're closed. Did the bank wire? It did.
Yeah.
Champagne, and then you went out. I missed that, because now it's like, oh, deal closed. Okay, next email, and then it's kind of anticlimactic, but there you go.
Yeah, my favorite story along those lines is we closed the deal on October 1, 2008, which, if you know your financial crisis,
Yeah.
I don't know if any other deal of any size closed that day. In fact, our bankers told us we were the only one they knew of that got funded. And we're actually standing in a conference room. We were the buyers with the sellers, and the guy who owned half the company turned to me and said, when the wires went through, great. Now I've just exchanged deal risk for counterparty risk, because he was literally afraid that his bank was going to go out of business before it could.
Correct.
Yeah, but we were, and we had a closing dinner, in Bermuda. It was bizarre. That I don't think that happens anymore. So that's part of the practice.
I mean, there are post-closing dinners that you can do, but like the one of like papers flying around, you're changing pages on the spot. I don't. That's not going to happen again. So
no, probably not. All right. Well, Andre, thank you so much for your time. We really enjoyed it. Is there anything that we should have asked you that we didn't?
No, not at all. I appreciate it. We're here if you want to do this again with us. As you can see, we're talkers, so we can just talk over for hours if you.
I did know before I asked it that Louis was not going to answer the favorite deal question.
He was not. But my deal was actually 08 too. So there was people were converging to like, that's why you need to get it done. So, because the wave was coming because of the financial crisis. But no, Thank you so much for the time. Thank you for doing this. Let us know if you need anything else from us. And what you guys do is very, very, I think, very important to pass along this with us and everyone else to the students that are coming up the chain of command and learning what this practice looks like.
Fantastic. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.